This last review is over units 5, 6, and 7 because they're what we've been doing since Christmas, hypothesis tests and confidence intervals. It's all inference procedures. So I'm going to go through some general ideas and I'll point out some things to you that I have given you for your concept review. So first, let's talk about confidence intervals. All right, confidence intervals generally have 4 steps, right? You can do the first 2 steps in whatever order you want to, but generally 4 steps. So one is to name the type of interval. And you want to include a degree of freedom measure if there is one. So you want to say what the degrees of freedom are if there are. Then you want to check the conditions. There's different conditions for different types of intervals, so make sure you look back at those. Then you want to show the mechanics. Every single confidence interval follows the same formula. Statistic plus or minus critical value times the standard deviation of the statistic. It says this very thing on the AP formula sheet. A statistic is what you came from your sample. So maybe p hat, maybe x bar, maybe the difference between 2 p hats, the difference between 2 x bars, all right? Maybe the slope, things like that. Critical values are your z star and t star that you find using inverse norm and inverse t. Those are your critical values. And then the standard deviation of the statistic is whatever standard deviation goes along with your statistic, and all of those are on the AP formula sheet. Okay? So show the mechanics. And finally, you need to make a conclusion. What does your confidence interval mean? I'm blank % confident that. We're always trying to track the true value. So the true proportion is, the true mean is, the difference between the proportions, the actual slope, right? We talked about how to report all of those into context, okay? That's confidence intervals. That's their 4 steps every single time. Then you have hypothesis tests. Which have a known 4 steps again. And we can make it 5 if you wanted to. 1, you need to state your null and alternative hypotheses. For some tests, we use symbols. For some tests, we use actual words. Just make sure you're saying what you actually mean to say. All right? If you're going to use symbols, make sure you use parameter values. Make sure you use mu. Make sure you use p, not p hat, not x bar, that kind of thing. All right, so state your hypotheses. Then you want to check the conditions. Again, different conditions for different types of tests. Make sure you know which is which. And with that, you want to name the test. Again, including the degrees of freedom, if necessary. Okay? Then you want to show the mechanics. How did you find the standard deviation? Formula on the AP formula sheet, probably. How did you find your test statistic? So z or t or chi-square. All right, there's formulas for that. And then what's your p-value? Okay, you have all of those things. And then finally, you need to make a conclusion. Based on the p-value. Is it high or is it low? If it's high, we fail to reject. If it's low, we reject. Right? And then you always put it into context. What does that mean if you reject or fail to reject? What is that? Okay? There's your hypothesis test every single time. The last thing you need to think about, I need to look all these things up. You also need to know, because they will ask you these. What is a type 1 error? What is a type 2 error? What do you know about power? All right. All of these things are in chapter 21. But you need to know about them. Okay? Now, I did not include those in the concept review, so you need to go back and look those up if you don't remember. You'll see a lot of those questions in the multiple choice that you're going to practice with. However, in front of you, hopefully, is the concept review. I have listed every single interval and test with their conditions and appropriate hypotheses, etc., for everything we have done since Christmas. I would look over those and know them. I also included how to do them in the calculator, included how many degrees of freedom they're supposed to be. So I would take the time to look over them. I have chi-square notes. I have slope notes. And at the very end, the last page, it tells you what is on the AP formula sheet. Know what these do and know how to use them. Okay? Remember, the AP formula sheet has 3 pages. And this is all on page 3. You should find it, right, when you're going through and taking the AP exam. Okay? So I'm going to leave you to it. Because don't need to go over for an entire class period every single little detail of every single interval or test. That won't help anybody. You guys can look over those and start trying to commit some of that to memory. Okay?